and behaviour, different communication aids, and what we call a total communication environment. Oh, why aren't my slides moving? Okay, so as probably already are aware, all behaviour happens for a reason, and often behaviours of concern are the only way a person has of communicating an unmet need. And as Amal already covered, there's lots of reasons what people may be trying to communicate, and that can include emotions, which could be quite high at the moment, such as being upset. Are they grieving? Are they missing particular people, etc.? Do they want a specific item? That could also be certain people that they've not been able to see. Are they wanting certain activities? Are they wanting to go to environments that they're currently not able to access? There could be sensory needs, for example, too hot, too cold, the lights, noise, etc. And to always be thinking medical as well. You know, how does the person you support communicate if they're in pain or discomfort? If you saw the health webinar a couple of weeks ago, there was a few tools there which you'll be able to access, such as the DISTAT, and there's an NHS pain and communication tool as well. So it's really important that everyone who's supporting an individual is aware how that person communicates those needs, and not just kind of get caught up in, oh, it's just challenging behaviour. They're just engaging behaviours of concern because that's what they do. They could be trying to tell you that something more is going on. Sometimes it's about wanting to escape, and that could be a situation. It could be they're doing an activity that they don't want to do anymore. Sometimes, unfortunately, it's the person that's supporting them, or it could be the immediate environment that they're in. And other times it can be to gain your attention. Just to tie everything into the escalation cycle that we've been looking at, when we're looking at communication, we want to be putting in steps proactively when people are at baseline. So all of the things that we've covered is going to be part of that baseline strategy. So our communication aids, the meaningful activities, structure and routine, etc. What we don't want to do is when people start to escalate is to then be bringing out the communication tools, or where is their textbook, where's their iPad. Sometimes that's something that we see happening. We want to be doing all of these things proactively so that we can keep the people that we support at baseline and keep them happy. So what communication aids, they allow those with communication difficulties to communicate effectively. Augmented communication tools are often used. So just as you and I speak to communicate, those with difficulties use the tools to express what they need. So with that in mind, it's critical that those that we're supporting have access to them at all times. If we leave things out of people's reach, or they're in a drawer in the office, or we've left them somewhere else, then that would be like you and I just not being able to speak for the time being. So we always want to make sure that those communication tools are accessible to the people that they're for. Something that we're hearing a lot at the moment is things are in place in other environments which our service users currently aren't in. So maybe they use augmented communication in school or day services, but now that they're closed, there's now, you know, they're not in an environment where they can have this effective communication. So due to this, you might see a resurgence of behaviours of concern, or they may start to develop new ones to get their needs met in an environment where they don't have this effective communication. So because of that, I would recommend, if you haven't already, or if things haven't come home with people, is contacting the services where these communication tools are in place. Hopefully they have things digitally, or they can post them to you, or at least, you know, you can have a phone call or a Zoom call about how to support with the communication. So just to cover a few communication aids, I'm sure there's lots out there and they will be person specific, but some of the most common ones include sign language, such as Makaton or British Sign Language, picture exchange communication or PETS, speech generating devices, visual schedules, and social stories. So sign language, if you're using this at home, you want to familiarise yourself with their most commonly used signs. So when someone's expressing what they want, you know, you want in the moment to be able to understand what they want. So imagine if we were asking for something and nobody understood us, and they're having these breakaway conversations, or what do you think they mean? Do you know what that sign is? Do you know where we've got that list? In that period, if someone's need isn't going to get met, chances are the behaviours are going to start to escalate as they're getting frustrated. And what can then happen is they're going to fall back on those behaviours of concern that they've used in the past to get that need met. Because usually when someone's engaging in something that we don't like, we're very quick to try to figure it out. But we want to make sure that we know what these signs, what these gestures, what this body language means, so that in that moment we can honour that preferred behaviour. It's really helpful if you sign and say when you're delivering an item, an activity, or you're just repeating back to somebody what they're asking for. This is, if that modelling of the sign is going to facilitate their understanding, because if you think if this is the language, the way of communicating that they understand expressively to us, there's a better chance they're going to understand that receptively as well. Also, by showing the signs, that's going to help the retention of their own language. Already covered contacting schools and services. They may have sign dictionaries where you'd get an image of the sign and a description to what it means. So that's quite helpful to have around for your own benefit. And the people that you live with, that live with you, are usually, you know, familiar where things are in their own home, such as the toilet, the kitchen, where to get things that they can independently. But if you want to support this further, if they're using something such as Makaton, you can go onto their website, which has lots and lots of free resources, and you could be using the symbols around the home. So PECs or choice boards, whatever you want to call them, maybe a folder, or it could be a single page or pages comprised of images. And how these usually work is the individual they might point to the picture, they might remove it if it's Velcro and come and hand it to you. And the idea is that when they hand you that image or they show you an image, you will in exchange give them the corresponding item or activity. As I've already said, I can't stress it enough, make sure it's available to them so they are able to ask you for what they want. Obviously, those things are changing, maybe in different environments. There's items and activities that can be delivered are different, and you might be coming up with new things, and certain things obviously aren't available at the moment. So you want to be updating these images if you can. And if you don't have a printer or a laminator or any of these things to maintain what's already there, you could do things, you know, be a bit creative. Maybe you draw some images if they can understand your drawing. Maybe you just go onto Google Images if someone's quite able and they can type it in, or you could type things in and they can show you on a tablet or a computer what it is that they would like. And a way to kind of be teaching it and replacing behaviours of concern is when you see someone kind of actively searching what that looks like for that person. You know, you can see them scanning the environment, or maybe they're starting to get a little bit agitated, is show them, you know, their PECs or their choice board, and just reminding them that it's there and supporting them to look through it to find the corresponding picture, so they're not falling back onto those behaviours of concern. It can also help, like with the signing, when you're delivering, just to be shown that corresponding picture, especially if you're using new images because you're putting new activities in place. If it's something new, usually there'd be an intensive teaching procedure that goes along with that. So you can just facilitate that with, say you've got a new activity of using the swimming pool in the garden, as Ellie suggested, you could have an image of that, and when you're asking, oh, you know, what would you like to do right now, you could be showing that as an option and saying that that's the swimming pool, and then I'll start to understand the relationship. Speech generating devices such as tablets or iPhones, or any phone, works in a very similar way to PECs. Just to mention here that often, again, if this is used in an environment that isn't the home, if schools, for example, have put this in place and they own the license, often that person's user profile is saved to the cloud. So it would be worth contacting them to see if that's the case. And that profile may be able to get downloaded onto your own devices or the service user's device. I know, for example, Proloquo to go, I think the basic license, it can be downloaded onto 5 different devices. So it'd be worth finding that out. And again, these are quite easy, much easier to update because you can just take a picture of the item. Visual schedules, we all love visual schedules. These are really, really helpful, especially at the moment, as they help people to predict what's going to happen, and this can reduce anxiety and uncertainty. Really good at helping with changes in routine, as it can be clear what's happening each day and each week. And this is something obviously that we're all struggling with, the change in our routine, not being able to do the things that we usually do. So people with a learning disability, and probably especially those on the autism spectrum, this is going to be a really difficult time for not understanding why they're not going to their day service, why they're not going bowling or to the cinema. So if you're using a visual schedule, you can clearly show what is and what isn't available on the coming days. And depending on your learner, these can be broken down as small or as large as you'd like. You could simply have a now and next board. So that would be a picture of what you're currently doing, followed by the one that's next. So it could be, you know, first we're going to do our personal care and then we're going to have our breakfast. You may do a daily or a half daily schedule. So that will be comprised of all the activities happening in the whole or half of the day and the order that they will be happen. And this is a nice activity to do with the person you're supporting, because then that's a time for an opportunity for choice and control as well. You can have the images available. What would you like to do today? You can be putting on the things that are set, such as medication, breakfast, personal care, etc. Excuse me. But then you can also facilitate opportunities for choice. And then once these activities are complete, they may enjoy taking them off to show that that part of the day is finished, especially if it was an unpreferred activity. And a weekly schedule, that's going to be a schedule for your whole week. So I've got scratchy throat. And this is just a few examples. So that first one there on the top left is what kind of a day or a half day schedule might look like. Underneath there, a now and next, and then a weekly schedule. But it's up to you. It's whatever works for the person, and obviously depending what resources you have available at the moment. And as I said, depending who you're supporting, it's going to depend on the length of the schedule used. It can be helpful to mix preferred and unpreferred activities. So if there's things that people struggle with, or things that are maybe more demanding at the moment, like washing your hands, the schedules can be helpful to show that a more fun activity is coming up. So yes, we have to wash our hands before, you know, we go on, after we come back from a walk, or if we're gone to the shop, or before we eat our meals. So you could be putting those images on, but you could be showing the super fun thing that's happening directly after. And if they're asking for something that's not available, which may be happening quite a lot at the moment, then you can use the schedules to show what is available. And alternatively, if it's something that's available at a different point in time, then you could be showing that perhaps on your weekly schedule, or if it's later on in the day. Social stories. These allow us to share information, which is often through a description of the events occurring and why. So these can be really helpful at the moment to explain social distancing, why we can't do our favourite things, why we can't see our favourite people, maybe why people have to wear PPE. It could be absolutely anything, but it's when you need to give them information to help somebody to understand, and that in turn can reduce anxiety and reduce agitation and frustration. And really simple to make. You can just make them on the computer, and a PowerPoint, and a Word document as to what's happening and why. And you may go through these leading up to the events, or in the moment as an explanation as to why you're doing something, or why something cannot happen. Again, that's going to depend on the learner. Sometimes too far in advance, you know, they're not going to make that connection. But then sometimes in the moment, it's too much information. So you're really just going to have to fine tune that as to when that information is going to be the most helpful. Here's just an example about Ramadan, just to give you an example of what a social story might look like. This has got lots of lovely images on it, but you might obviously not have availability to this kind of software. So Google Images is your best friend for social stories. It's what I usually use, and they have a picture for everything. And we've got a lot made at the moment around COVID-19. So if people want to email me after, I can send out a whole pack of social stories and easy reads about the current situation. So total communication environment, there's loads and loads of information out there on this, but just a few brief notes. What we mean when we say that is creating an environment that fully supports the people that you're supporting to communicate. And some of these can just be subtle and simple changes, which are going to enhance their communication, but also their understanding. So consistency, can't really stress that enough, of how we communicate with each individual. What we don't want is one member of staff or family member using the communication aids and another one not. Yeah, we want to make sure there's consistency across everyone that's supporting the individuals. If you've got large staff teams, then you might need to create a communication dictionary, communication passport, that type of thing that can be shared across the support networks so that everybody is up to date and informed of how best to communicate with who you're supporting. As we said about signing systems, using the sign or gesture as well as the spoken word, because as this can double the impact of the message. What is the person that you're supporting's language level? If the individual only is understanding is at a one-word level, then that's how you want to be communicating with them as well. You want to be matching where their language is at to enhance their understanding of what you're communicating. So if they're only at a one-word level or 2-3 word level, you want to be keeping information as concise as possible and also allowing them time to process the information. Adapting, if you're not being understood, try changing the communication method. Are you matching where they're at? Are you using their communication systems? Could you be making it simpler? Do you need to back it up with an image or an object? Rather than just, you hear things a lot like they just don't listen, or they just do what they want, or they're not interested. If you're not getting any kind of response at all, then maybe have a think about how you're communicating to them. And using your face and your body, just as you would with anybody that that you're talking to, friends and family. You want to be facing the person, you want to be using your own gestures and facial expressions, and probably not touch right now. But if members of the same household, then yeah, if that's how you need to get somebody's attention or to effectively communicate with them and it's safe to do so, then there's some changes that you can make. And that's that. Thank you.